The security guard's face went pale when he realized who he'd just turned away from the private jet. Tessa Blake stood there with her boarding pass, watching as the pilot emerged from the cockpit and did something that would leave everyone speechless. What happened next would expose a truth that no one saw coming and change the lives of everyone on that runway forever. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine tarmac of Millbrook Executive Airport, where million-dollar jets sat like sleeping giants waiting to ferry the wealthy across continents. Tessa Blake adjusted her Hermes briefcase and walked with the confidence of someone who had earned her place in boardrooms, where she was often the only woman and almost always the only person who looked like her. At 38, she had built Nexus Dynamics from a small tech startup in her garage to a Fortune 100 company that revolutionized sustainable energy solutions. Her dark skin gleamed under the morning light, and her natural hair was styled in an elegant twist that spoke of both professionalism and pride in her heritage. She approached the sleek Gulfstream G650 with its distinctive blue and silver livery, the same jet she had chartered dozens of times for crucial business meetings. Today's destination was critical, a merger negotiation in Geneva that could position her company as the global leader in renewable technology. The numbers were staggering, a $12 billion deal that would create jobs for thousands and accelerate the fight against climate change. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice belonged to a young security guard with nervous eyes and a clipboard clutched too tightly in his hands. "I'm going to need to see some identification." Tessa paused, her heels clicking once more against the concrete before she turned to face him. She had encountered this scenario more times than she cared to count, in restaurants, hotels, and exclusive venues where her presence was questioned despite her obvious wealth and status. "Of course," she replied smoothly, reaching into her purse for her driver's license. The guard examined it with an intensity that bordered on suspicious, comparing the photo to her face multiple times. "Ma'am, I think there might be some confusion. This aircraft is reserved for a Fortune 500 CEO today. Perhaps you're looking for a different jet?" The knowing smile played at the corners of Tessa's mouth. She had been here before, not just at this airport, but in this exact situation where assumptions were made based on her appearance rather than her achievements. "I assure you, I'm in the right place." Nexus Dynamics chartered this aircraft for a flight to Geneva departing at 9:30. The guard's expression grew more skeptical. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I think you might be confused. The passenger manifest shows a T. Blake, and this is definitely a male executive. High-level corporate types, you understand. Maybe you're looking for the Perker commercial terminal? It's just down the road." Tessa's smile widened, though her eyes flashed with a mixture of amusement and frustration. She had learned long ago that getting angry in these situations only reinforced negative stereotypes. Instead, she chose to educate through patience and grace. "T. Blake would be me, Tessa Blake, Chief Executive Officer of Nexus Dynamics." Before the guard could respond, another voice cut through the morning air. "Is there a problem here?" A tall man in an expensive suit approached, his silver hair perfectly styled and his bearing radiating the kind of authority that comes from decades in corporate boardrooms. This was Harrison Webb, CEO of Consolidated Industries and one of the most powerful men in American business. The security guard's demeanor immediately shifted to one of deference. "Mr. Webb, sir, I was just explaining to this lady that the jet is reserved for your meeting today. There seems to be some confusion." Webb's eyes narrowed as he looked between Tessa and the guard. "What kind of confusion?" "Well, sir," the guard continued, his voice gaining confidence from Webb's presence, "she claims to be T. Blake, but obviously that can't be right. The manifest clearly shows a male executive." Webb studied Tessa for a long moment, his expression unreadable. She held his gaze steadily, waiting to see which side of history he would choose to stand on. In her experience, moments like these revealed people's true character more than any interview or background check ever could. "Young man," Webb said finally, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" The guard's face lit up with what he assumed was validation. "Well, no sir, but I know she's not the CEO you're supposed to be meeting with." Webb's expression grew stern. "This is Tessa Blake, one of the most innovative leaders in American business today. Her company has revolutionized sustainable energy and created more jobs in the past 5 years than most corporations manage in a decade." He turned to Tessa with a respectful nod. "Ms. Blake, I apologize for this misunderstanding. I've been looking forward to our discussion about the partnership possibilities between our companies." The security guard's face went through a series of color changes, from confusion to realization to mortification. I had no idea." "Ms. Blake, I sincerely apologize. It's just that the name on the manifest." Tessa held up a graceful hand. "No permanent harm done. But perhaps this is a learning opportunity. Assumptions can be costly, both personally and professionally." As if the morning couldn't become more interesting, the sound of footsteps on the aircraft stairs drew everyone's attention. A figure in a crisp pilot's uniform emerged from the cockpit, his sultan pepper hair visible beneath his captain's hat. Captain Gómez Rodriguez had been flying private jets for over 20 years, serving everyone from tech moguls to foreign dignitaries. But as his eyes fell on Tessa, his entire demeanor changed. The pilot's face broke into a wide grin of recognition and respect. Without hesitation, he snapped to attention and delivered a sharp military salute. "Miss Blake, it's an honor to have you aboard again. Welcome back." The security guard's clipboard clattered to the ground as his mouth fell open. Webb raised an eyebrow in curiosity, while Tessa returned the pilot's greeting with warmth and familiarity. "Captain Rodriguez, always a pleasure. How's Maria doing with her engineering studies? Thanks to the scholarship from your foundation, she's thriving at MIT. She wants to work on renewable energy projects." "Following in your footsteps." The pilot's voice carried genuine gratitude and admiration. The morning air seemed to thicken with the weight of realization. The security guard stood frozen, understanding dawning on his face like a slow sunrise. Webb watched the interaction with growing interest, recognizing the kind of mutual respect that develops between people who have shared meaningful experiences. "Captain," Tessa said, her voice carrying both authority and kindness, "I believe we're ready for departure. The Geneva meeting starts at 3 local time, and punctuality will be crucial for these negotiations." "Of course, Ms. Blake. Weather looks perfect for our crossing, and I've already filed the flight plan. We'll have you there with time to spare." Captain Rodriguez turned to the security guard, his expression professional but pointed. "Young man, you might want to familiarize yourself with the regular passengers. Ms. Blake has been flying with us for years." As they began walking toward the aircraft, Webb fell into step beside Tessa. "I have to admit, I'm curious about the history between you and the captain. That level of respect doesn't develop overnight." Tessa paused at the bottom of the stairs, her hand resting on the polished rail. 3 years ago, Captain Rodriguez's daughter Maria was accepted to MIT for aerospace engineering. But the family couldn't afford the tuition. She had dreams of working on sustainable aviation technology, of helping to create the next generation of environmentally friendly aircraft. She continued up the stairs as she spoke, her voice carrying over the gentle hum of the jet's auxiliary power unit. "When I learned about her situation through a mutual friend, Nexus Dynamics was happy to provide a full scholarship, not as charity, but as an investment in the future. Maria is exactly the kind of brilliant mind we need to solve the world's energy challenges." End quote. Webb nodded approvingly as they settled into the luxurious cabin. "Smart business and good karma. I like that approach." The security guard remained on the tarmac, staring up at the jet with a mixture of embarrassment and newfound understanding. Captain Rodriguez appeared at the cabin door and called down to him, "Next time, son, remember that leadership comes in all colors and all genders. The sooner you learn that lesson, the better your career will go." As the engine spooled up and the aircraft began its taxi to the runway, Tessa settled into her seat and opened her laptop. The presentation she had prepared for the Geneva meeting represented months of preparation and could potentially transform the global energy landscape. But her mind kept drifting back to the encounter with the security guard and the assumptions that had driven his behavior. Webb, seated across from her, seemed to be thinking along similar lines. You handled that situation with remarkable grace. Many executives I know would have demanded the young man be fired. Tessa looked up from her laptop, her expression thoughtful. Anger rarely teaches the lessons we want people to learn. Besides, that young man will remember this morning for the rest of his career. Every time he encounters someone who doesn't fit his preconceptions, he'll think twice before making assumptions. You're assuming he learned something, Webb observed. People usually do, when the lesson is delivered with respect rather than humiliation. Tessa returned to her presentation, making final adjustments to the financial projections that would anchor her negotiation strategy. The Gulf Stream lifted off smoothly, climbing through the morning clouds toward cruising altitude. Below them, the city spread out like a circuit board, its patterns of streets and buildings reminding Tessa of the complex systems her company designed to harness and distribute renewable energy. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom with updates on their comm. Flight progress? His tone professional and courteous. But Tessa could hear the underlying warmth that spoke to their ongoing relationship. It was the same tone she tried to cultivate with all her employees, a mixture of authority and genuine care for their well-being and success. I've been reading about your company's work in developing nations, Webb said, looking up from his own laptop. The microgrid projects in Kenya and Bangladesh are impressive. What drove you to expand internationally so aggressively? Tessa saved her document and gave him her full attention. Energy poverty affects over 1 billion people worldwide. They're trapped in cycles of economic disadvantage, partly because they lack access to reliable electricity. Our technology can change that, creating opportunities for education, healthcare, and economic development that simply don't exist without power infrastructure. She gestured toward the window, where white clouds stretched endlessly toward the horizon. But it's also good business. These markets represent enormous growth potential as their economies develop. By establishing our presence early and building genuine partnerships with local communities, we're positioned to grow alongside them. Webb leaned back in his seat, clearly impressed. Most CEOs talk about social responsibility, but few integrate it so thoroughly into their business strategy. Your shareholders must appreciate the long-term thinking. The ones who matter do, Tessa replied with a slight smile. We've been fortunate to attract investors who understand that sustainable business practices and sustainable profits go hand in hand. Companies that exploit their workers, their communities, or their environment might see short-term gains, but they're building on foundations of sand. The conversation continued as they crossed over the Atlantic, covering topics from renewable energy technology to the challenges of scaling global operations. Webb proved to be an engaging conversationalist with deep knowledge of international markets and a genuine curiosity about Tessa's innovative approaches to business challenges. As they approached European airspace, Captain Rodriguez provided another update on their arrival time and weather conditions in Geneva. The city appeared below them like a jewel nestled between mountains and lake, its organized beauty a testament to Swiss grade, precision, and prosperity. Ms. Blake, the captain announced over the intercom, we'll be landing in about 20 minutes. The weather's perfect, and your ground transportation is standing by. Tessa began organizing her materials, double-checking that she had everything needed for the crucial negotiations ahead. The merger she was discussing would create the world's largest renewable energy consortium, with the potential to accelerate the global transition away from fossil fuels by decades. Nervous? Webb asked, noting her final preparations. Excited, she corrected. This deal represents everything I've worked towards since starting Nexus Dynamics. If we can make it work, we'll have the resources and scale to implement solutions that could genuinely change the world's energy future. The aircraft touched down smoothly at Geneva International Airport, and Captain Rodriguez expertly guided it to the private aviation terminal. As they prepared to disembark, he appeared at the cabin door with the same respectful demeanor he had shown throughout the flight. Ms. Blake, it's been a pleasure, as always. Good luck with your meetings today. Thank you, Captain. Please give my regards to Maria when you speak with her next. Tessa gathered her briefcase and prepared to step into what could be the most important day of her professional career. As they walked across the tarmac toward the waiting vehicles, Webb turned to her with an expression of genuine respect. You know, when I first heard about this meeting, I wasn't sure what to expect. Your reputation in the industry is impressive, but reputation and reality don't always align. Tessa raised an eyebrow questioningly. Reality is even more impressive than the reputation, he continued. The way you handled that situation this morning, your approach to business, your vision for the future, it's exactly the kind of leadership the world needs right now. The limousine ride into the city gave Tessa a few minutes to reflect on the morning's events. The encounter with the security guard was unfortunately familiar, but the support she had received from both Webb and Captain Rodriguez reminded her that allies existed in unexpected places. Progress was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it was progress nonetheless. The hotel where the negotiations would take place was a study in understated elegance, the kind of venue where world-changing decisions were made over carefully prepared meals and precisely crafted agreements. Tessa had been in similar rooms before, representing not just her company but serving as proof that leadership came in forms that challenged traditional expectations. In her suite, she took a few minutes to center herself before the meetings began. The young security guard's assumptions had been wrong, but they reflected biases that she encountered regularly in the business world. Every successful negotiation, every innovative solution, every job created by her company was a small victory against those assumptions. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her assistant back in New York. Saw the news about the Geneva meeting. The whole team is rooting for you. Make history today. Tessa smiled, thinking about the hundreds of employees who depended on her leadership and vision. They came from every background imaginable, united by their commitment to building a more sustainable future. The deal she was about to negotiate would provide opportunities for thousands more people to join that mission. A knock at her door announced the arrival of Kane, her legal team, who had flown in earlier to prepare for the complex negotiations ahead. They spent the next hour reviewing contract terms, financial projections, and regulatory requirements that would govern the proposed merger. The European partners are impressed with our technology portfolio, her chief counsel reported, but they're concerned about our ability to scale manufacturing to meet global demand. That's exactly why we need this partnership, Tessa replied. Their manufacturing capabilities combined with our innovation pipeline create something neither of us could achieve alone. The conference room where the negotiations took place overlooked Lake Geneva, its waters reflecting the alpine peaks that surrounded the city. Representatives from 6 countries sat around a polished mahogany table, each bringing expertise and resources that would contribute to the consortium's success. Tessa took her place at the head of the table, the only woman and one of only 2 people of color in the room, but her presence commanded immediate respect, earned through years of innovation and results that spoke louder than any prejudice or assumption. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had earned her place through merit and determination. "We have the opportunity today to create something unprecedented. Not just a business partnership, but a coalition that can accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy by decades." The presentation that followed laid out a vision that was both ambitious and achievable. Nexus Dynamics' breakthrough technologies in energy storage and distribution would be combined with European manufacturing expertise and Asian market access to create a truly global renewable energy ecosystem. Questions came from around the table, probing technical specifications, financial projections, and implementation timelines. Tessa answered each with the depth of knowledge that came from having built her company from the ground up, understanding every aspect of the technology and business model that made it successful. "Ms. Blake," asked the representative from the German consortium, "your projections show significant job creation in developing markets. How do you ensure that local communities benefit from these investments rather than simply being exploited for cheap labor?" End quote. It was exactly the kind of question that revealed whether someone understood the true scope of what they were trying to achieve. Tessa's answer drew on years of experience working in these markets and building genuine partnerships with local communities. "Sustainable business practices require sustainable communities," she explained. "We invest in education and training programs that create genuine career opportunities, not just temporary employment. We source materials locally whenever possible and ensure that our presence strengthens rather than displaces existing economic structures." The negotiations continued through the afternoon, with breaks for detailed technical discussions and private consultations between partners. By evening, the framework of an agreement was taking shape that would create the largest renewable energy consortium in history. As the formal sessions concluded, several participants approached Tessa individually to express their admiration for her vision and leadership. The Chinese representative mentioned that his government was particularly interested in expanding their collaboration on rural electrification projects. The French delegate discussed opportunities for joint research initiatives at leading European universities. Back in her hotel suite that evening, Tessa video called her executive team in New York to update them on the day's progress. Their excitement was palpable as she described the potential scope of the partnership and the opportunities it would create for the company's continued growth. The media coverage has been incredible, her marketing director reported. The story about this morning's incident at the airport has gone viral on social media. People are sharing it as an example of the kind of bias that still exists in corporate America. Tessa sighed, understanding both the positive and negative aspects of such attention. Make sure our response focuses on the opportunities for education and improvement, not on blame or anger. That young security guard made a mistake, but he also learned from it. The next morning brought final negotiations and the signing of preliminary agreements that would lead to the formal merger over the following months. As Tessa prepared to return to New York, she reflected on how far her company had come and how much further they could go with the resources and partnerships now available to them. Captain Rodriguez was waiting at the aircraft when she arrived at the airport, his greeting as warm and respectful as it had been during their departure. "How did the meetings go, Ms. Blake?" "Better than I had hoped," she replied, settling into her seat for the return flight. "We're going to be able to do some truly remarkable things." As the Gulf Stream lifted off from Geneva and turned west toward home, Tessa thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. The security guard's assumptions had been wrong, but they had also created an opportunity for education and growth. Webb's support had opened doors to new partnerships. Captain Rodriguez's respect reflected the relationships she had built through years of treating people with dignity and investing in their success. The flight home gave her time to work on implementation plans for the new partnership, mapping out timelines and resource allocations that would transform their theoretical agreements into concrete results. But she also found herself thinking about Maria Rodriguez, the pilot's daughter who was studying aerospace engineering with support from the Nexus Dynamics Scholarship Program. Young women like Maria represented the future of the industry, bringing fresh perspectives and innovative ideas to challenges that had seemed insurmountable to previous generations. By investing in their education and careers, companies like Nexus Dynamics were building the talent pipeline that would drive continued innovation and growth. As they crossed back over the Atlantic, Tessa's phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, investors, and industry publications wanting to discuss the Geneva agreements. The business press was calling it a watershed moment for renewable energy, while technology analysts were projecting massive disruption in traditional energy markets. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. It was from the security guard at Millbrook Executive Airport, sent through the airport's customer service department. "Ms. Blake, I wanted to apologize again for my behavior yesterday morning. I've been thinking about what you said about assumptions being costly, and I realize how much I need to change my approach to my job and to people in general. I've signed up for diversity training and cultural competency courses because I never want to make someone feel unwelcome based on my ignorance again. Thank you for handling the situation with such grace and for teaching me a lesson I'll never forget." Tessa showed the message to Captain Rodriguez, who smiled with satisfaction. "That young man is going to be a better person and a better employee because of how you handled that situation. Not everyone would have had your patience." "Everyone deserves the chance to learn and grow," Tessa replied. "The business world is changing, and people who adapt will thrive, while those who cling to old assumptions will be left behind." The remainder of the flight was spent in productive work, with Tessa finalizing presentations for her board of directors and preparing announcements for employees and shareholders. The Geneva partnership would require significant changes in how Nexus Dynamics operated, but the opportunities for growth and impact were unprecedented. As they began their approach to New York, Captain Rodriguez made his customary announcement about weather conditions and arrival procedures. But he added a personal note that reflected the relationship they had developed over years of professional interaction. Ms. Blake, it's been an honor to be part of your journey to Geneva and back. Congratulations on what you've accomplished, and thank you for the opportunities you've created for people like my daughter. The aircraft touched down at the same airport where their journey had begun, but everything had changed in the span of 48 hours. The merger agreements would transform Nexus Dynamics from a successful American company into a global leader in renewable energy. The partnerships established in Geneva would create thousands of jobs and accelerate the development of sustainable technologies that could help address climate change. But perhaps more importantly, the encounters along the way had demonstrated that progress was possible when people approached each other with respect, curiosity, and willingness to challenge their own assumptions. The security guard who had initially questioned Tessa's presence at the airport had learned valuable lessons about bias and professionalism. Webb had discovered a potential business partner whose vision aligned with his own values. Captain Rodriguez had seen his investment in treating all passengers with dignity reflected back in opportunities for his family. As Tessa gathered her materials and prepared to disembark, she thought about the road ahead. The work of building a more sustainable energy future would require continued innovation, substantial investment, and partnerships that transcended traditional boundaries of geography, culture, and background. The limousine ride back to her Manhattan office gave her a few minutes to transition from international negotiator back to chief executive, preparing to share the day's successes with her team and begin the complex work of implementation. The Nexus Dynamics headquarters building rose before them, its solar panel facade gleaming in the afternoon sun as a visible symbol of the company's commitment to sustainable technology. Her assistant was waiting in the lobby with updates on the day's developments, including calls from major investors, interview requests from business publications, and congratulatory messages from political leaders who understood the significance of the Geneva Agreements for American competitiveness in renewable energy markets. The executive conference room was packed with department heads eager to hear details about the partnership and understand how it would affect their respective areas of responsibility. Tessa spent the next 2 hours walking through the agreements, answering questions about implementation timelines, and discussing the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. This partnership gives us access to manufacturing capabilities that would have taken us years to develop independently, she explained to her operations team. But it also means we need to scale our workforce significantly and ensure that our company culture remains strong as we grow internationally. The questions that followed demonstrated the depth of talent and expertise that Nexus Dynamics had assembled over the years. These were people who understood both the technical and business aspects of renewable energy, who could execute complex projects while maintaining the innovative spirit that had driven the company's success. As the meeting concluded, Tessa's chief technology officer approached with an update on research projects that would be accelerated by the new partnership. The European laboratories have capabilities we've only dreamed about, she reported. We could potentially reduce our development timelines by years and bring breakthrough technologies to market much faster than we originally projected. The remainder of the week was spent in similar sessions with different teams, ensuring that everyone understood their role in implementing the partnership agreements and preparing for the company's next phase of growth. But Tessa also made time for individual conversations with key employees, understanding that successful organizational change required attention to personal concerns and career aspirations. On Friday afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. Harrison Webb had flown in from Chicago and requested a brief meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities between their companies. They met in her corner office, which offered sweeping views of the Hudson River and the renewable energy installations that dotted the New Jersey shoreline. "I've been thinking about our conversation on the flight to Geneva," Webb began, settling into one of the chairs that faced her desk. "Your approach to business, the way you integrate social responsibility with profit maximization, it's exactly what the corporate world needs right now." Tessa poured coffee from the service that her assistant had prepared, noting that Webb seemed more relaxed and reflective than he had been during their previous interactions. "What specifically interests you about potential collaboration?" Consolidated Industries has significant infrastructure assets that could be converted to renewable energy applications, he explained. We also have manufacturing capabilities that might complement what you're developing with the European partners. But more than that, I'm interested in learning from your leadership approach. They spent the next hour discussing potential areas of cooperation, from joint ventures in specific markets to broader strategic partnerships that could benefit both companies. But the conversation kept returning to questions of leadership and organizational culture. That incident with the security guard, Webb said, as their meeting drew to a close. It could have gone very differently. Many executives would have demanded immediate termination, made it a public relations issue, turned it into an example of how they won't tolerate discrimination. And what would that have accomplished? Tessa asked. The young man would have lost his job, but he wouldn't have learned anything. Other people in similar positions would have become more careful about their biases, but not necessarily less biased. Webb nodded thoughtfully. Instead, he apologized, enrolled in training programs, and probably became an advocate for treating all customers with respect regardless of their appearance. Change happens one person at a time, Tessa observed. Companies can implement policies and procedures, but real progress requires individuals to examine their own assumptions and choose to do better. As Webb prepared to leave, he paused at the office door. I hope you'll consider some form of partnership between our companies. But even if that doesn't work out, I want you to know that meeting you has changed how I think about leadership and business responsibility. That evening, Tessa stayed late in her office, working on strategic plans that would guide Nexus Dynamics through its next phase of growth. The Geneva partnership was just the beginning of what could be a transformation not just of her company, but of the entire renewable energy industry. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Captain Rodriguez. Maria called today to thank you again for the scholarship. She's been selected for a summer internship with Boeing, working on sustainable aviation technologies. She said it's because the scholarship gave her the confidence to pursue opportunities she never thought possible. End quote. Tessa smiled, remembering her own early career, when mentors and sponsors had opened doors that she couldn't even see at the time. The cycle of opportunity and investment in others was one of the most rewarding aspects of business success, creating ripple effects that extended far beyond immediate financial returns. The following Monday brought news that the Geneva Partnership had received final regulatory approval from all participating governments, clearing the way for formal implementation over the following months. Stock markets responded positively to the announcement, with Nexus Dynamics shares reaching an all-time high on projections of accelerated growth and market expansion. But for Tessa, the most satisfying response came from her employees, who understood that the partnership represented job security, career opportunities, and the chance to work on projects that could genuinely make the world a better place. The company's mission of sustainable energy development was no longer just an aspiration. It was becoming a reality with global reach and impact. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity, as the partnership agreements were implemented and new projects launched in markets around the world. Nexus Dynamics opened offices in 6 countries, hired hundreds of new employees, and began construction on manufacturing facilities that would produce renewable energy systems at unprecedented scale. Through it all, Tessa maintained her commitment to the leadership principles that had guided her from the beginning. Every new hire was treated with respect and given opportunities to grow. Every business decision was evaluated not just for its financial impact, but for its effects on communities and the environment. Every partnership was built on foundations of mutual benefit and shared values. The security guard from Millbrook Executive Airport became an unexpected symbol of the company's approach to people and relationships. His transformation from biased assumptions to cultural competency was featured in diversity training programs, not as an example of failure, but as proof that people could change and grow when given the opportunity and support. Captain Rodriguez continued to pilot flights for Nexus Dynamics executives, and his daughter Maria graduated from MIT with honors before joining the company's aerospace research division. Her work on sustainable aviation technologies represented the next generation of innovation that would extend renewable energy principles into new industries and applications. Harrison Webb's Consolidated Industries became a major partner in several renewable energy projects, with Webb himself serving as an advocate for sustainable business practices within the broader corporate RI community. The relationship that began with a chance encounter on a private jet evolved into a strategic alliance that benefited both companies and advanced their shared commitment to environmental responsibility. Years later, when business schools studied the rapid growth of the renewable energy industry, they often pointed to the Geneva Partnership as a turning point when sustainable technology moved from niche applications to mainstream adoption. But those who knew Tessa Blake understood that the real transformation had begun much earlier, with a simple commitment to treating people with dignity and investing in their potential for growth and contribution. The story of the morning at Millbrook Executive Airport became part of corporate folklore, told and retold as an example of how assumptions could be challenged and relationships built through mutual respect and understanding. It reminded everyone involved that progress was possible, one interaction at a time, when people chose to see past their preconceptions to the potential that existed in every individual. Tessa Blake's journey from that misunderstood moment on the tarmac to global leadership in renewable energy demonstrated that true power came not from demanding respect, but from earning it through consistent action and unwavering commitment to principles that elevated everyone involved. The jet may have been reserved for a Fortune 500 CEO, but the real destination was a future where leadership was defined by character rather than assumptions, and where success was measured by the opportunities created for others to thrive and contribute to a better world.